Hey friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2015 Volkswagen Touareg. This is a TDI, though you can probably barely tell from the sound here. Today we're actually going to take this on a test drive, a little bit on-road, but mostly off-road. So let's get started. Our short drive here today starts out at the Devil's Thumb Ranch Resort, which is in the Rocky Mountains, just above Denver. And the specific vehicle we've got, it's a 2015 Volkswagen Touareg TDI, which has the 3-liter V6 turbo diesel engine. That one has 240 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque, and drives all four wheels with standard 4-motion, and that is through an 8-speed automatic transmission. And this one, just for your information, stickers at about $65,000. Right now we're just caravanning out to the actual off-road trail we're going to be taking here on our little drive. And just some observations here. If you like the sound of a diesel engine, this turbo V6 is just smooth as silk. It just makes you want to curl up and cuddle with it. It's got such a nice purr. It's so quiet. And the way it responds to your throttle inputs, it's just like velvet. And this automatic transmission also works very well with it. Sometimes automatics and diesels tend to be, well, not as refined as you'd like, because the torque that diesels have, the transmissions have to be really heavy duty. And so what happens sometimes is these transmissions are tuned to where the shifts tend to be a little rougher, a little stiffer than you'd like. And in a luxury vehicle like this, the way this is tuned is very much in keeping. It's got a nice smooth shifting behavior, and of course you can put it over here in manual and do some manual shifting if that's what you're into. This scenery up here is just absolutely amazing. I'm from Arizona, so anything that's green always looks good to me. But here it's just really what I think if you were to look up grandeur on Wikipedia, if there was a single photo, this is it. I mean, we're very high in elevation, and of course right now we're just hitting into fall, so the colors are starting to really show up on the trees in all the right places. And you'll probably see some of that a little later in our drive here. Right now we're sort of out in the meadow area here, but the vistas are just amazing. This is a beautiful place. And in case you were wondering, Devil's Thumb Ranch is actually very close to Granby or Winter Park, Colorado. On the highway, the ride here is very quiet, diesel engine or not. This has very little wind noise, very little tire noise, and the ride's very stable, as you'd expect with a German vehicle. Now, with regard to the diesel engine, you do hear a little bit of a purr in the background, but it's very faint. So when you're actually rolling down the highway, this thing is only spinning about 1,500 RPM, and we're going just under 60 miles an hour. The first phase of our drive, which is ultimately taking us out into the mountains on the back trails, is a bit of a washboard road here. And if you watch my videos, one thing you know is that I love to take a car like this out on the washboard road. I say car, but I mean crossover, SUV, trucks, anything that's really meant for taking off the pavement, because what a washboard road does is it really shows you how well tuned the suspension is, how tight the chassis is, and overall how well sorted that vehicle is in terms of its build quality, because a washboard road, that vibration can make a car feel like a pile. And so what I'm finding out here is that the suspension on the Touareg here is tilted a bit more towards an on-road experience. It's a stiffer suspension. It's got a bit more of a staccato feel to it, and so that gives you that better handling edge on the highway. Out here, what it's translating to is a little bit of vibration through the vehicle on this washboard road, but it's not the kind of vibration that makes it feel like it's not built well. I'm not getting any rattling or shaking in the door frames. I'm not getting any kickback in the steering. And for the most part, it's feeling pretty solid. One of the nice characteristics of this particular engine here is its torque, especially when going up hills like this. When you sort of lay into that throttle, you get a nice lunge effect as the turbos spool up and that torque comes on. And this thing's just barely idling along, yet you feel that torque really sort of push into your back. Before you have to hit the brakes, because we're in a tight caravan here with other vehicles.
The only problem with these things is they never really ever let you loose. You're always controlled. So while we're following the Range Rover Evoque here, the navigation system here's got a really cool screen here as far as being able to easily zoom in here. If you can see right here, there's a slide bar as far as your zoom view, and it really has quite a bit of range, but it's easy to do on the fly. Even when you're driving along in a tight caravan, you're trying to not hit the guy in front of you, you can just slide that along and zoom in and out and really get some nice views. And here we've got a 3D view, which is very cool, especially in the mountains. It really sort of helps make that a little bit more intuitive here, and seeing what you're seeing here, and then as well as what you actually see out there in the topography. I like that a lot. That is a very cool feature. Okay, this is going to be by far the most challenging bit of our drive here so far, a hairpin turn with a rock on it. Here we go. Is it going to make it? Woo! We made it! Okay. Well, there's our off-road section. We're done now. I'm just kidding. So now we're on a narrow trail, which is pretty challenging for most SUVs. There's trees on both sides, which means that at any minute one of them could scrape the side of the vehicle if I'm not paying attention. So this takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of concentration. Thank goodness I've got plenty of experience doing this, so I doubt we're going to have any trouble today, but I'm on high alert. Now, let's talk about the off-road capability of the Touareg here for a moment. The first Touareg had a lot of off-road toys. It had a lot going on in terms of its traction and its locking capabilities that really allowed you to sort of, well, be more specific with how you want it set. This Touareg, they've sort of gotten off that a little bit. It still has plenty of capability out here. If this were snow, if this were a lot steeper, maybe muddy, there is a console selector down here that you can go from. Well, basically there's two modes. There's on the pavement mode and off the pavement mode. And like many vehicles, what it essentially is, it's a computer controlled drive mode selector that really manages traction control, it manages your throttle and your transmission, and it manages the ABS. So what it really does is it uses the ABS and the throttle controls and the transmission shifting behavior to manage all of those things that manual locking used to. And it actually does work pretty well, especially when you get into some challenging, slippery situations where it can actually start directing the power to different wheels by way of, brake actuated torque vectoring. And even though that isn't true torque vectoring, it still does get the job done. We left the Devil's Thumb Ranch, and down there it was right around 8,600 feet in elevation. Right now it's showing me that we're at 9,500 feet. So in our short little drive thus far, we've climbed about 1,000 feet in elevation, and we're still going up the hill. In my opinion, Volkswagen really ought not offer anything else in this thing but this powertrain. And if you look at their sales numbers, a majority of buyers do choose the TDI here in the Touareg. Now the gas V6 is fine, and it is less money than this. But as we've talked about in other videos where I really do talk about the argument for the diesel engine in any vehicle, let alone the Volkswagen models here, the extra cost that you spend buying into this engine, first of all, you always get that back in resale value. That's a given. If you spend the money buying the diesel vehicle, you're going to get the money back whenever it is you get rid of that car, regardless of whether it's a year from now, 5, 10 years. It doesn't matter. Look at used diesel vehicles on any major online retail site, and you're going to see that if you compare that to a gas engine, there's just no comparison on resale value. Now, the other thing is, of course, fuel economy is better. Now, in an SUV, that really means something because, well, these things can be quite thirsty. And of course, the last thing is, at least currently, diesel fuel is back in its normal state of being, which is it costs less than gas. It costs less, and it uses less. So you stand a very good chance of this vehicle actually saving you money over the long term in operating cost. Maintenance is a little bit more, again, a given. But if you're looking at just leasing a vehicle for 24, 36 months, even 48 months, the vehicle is going to be within its warranty. Most of the time, that's never going to be an issue for you, other than doing oil changes and things like that. You're never going to have to worry about what it actually costs to maintain a diesel over the long term. Well, folks, that concludes our little test drive here of the Touareg. Now, we'll be doing a much more in-depth drive a little later down the road when we get more time with the vehicle. This was just sort of a, here's the keys, go follow these people, go out and take a short drive kind of a thing. So I hope you at least learn one or two things here. I'm Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride.